Welcome, everyone, to our first show of the new year. I am thrilled that you're joining us. My name is Lisa Rowe, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the CEO for Support After Abortion. And I couldn't think of a better way to start the new year than to talk about one of our most infamous initiatives that we have this year. So I'm going to invite our guest, Nathan Misirian, onto the show. Welcome, Nathan.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me on today.
I am so grateful that last minute you would join me. You're so good at pivoting with me. For everybody watching, I just want to share a little bit about Nathan and I's journey together. We started working together in a consultant capacity when I was the executive director at our pregnancy center here in Southwest Florida. And Nathan just invited a level of excellence and just a different measure that I felt was definitely needed in the movement. And we've been able to bring him along with us to Support After Abortion, and he doesn't get enough face time. He's the behind the scenes everything for Support After Abortion, from all of our tech to our creative marketing. Everything that that you see that's outward focused is a large part to do with Nathan and his team. So Nathan, thank you so much for all that you do for us and for what you're doing for the abortion healing movement. We are so grateful.
Thank you so much. And I love our partnership. Your leadership and clarity makes my job really very easy and fun. And I like pivoting, so always keeps it fresh.
So Nathan, would you introduce yourself to everybody that's watching? Some may have talked to you through email or over the phone, troubleshooting through one of our virtual conferences, but you actually have a huge heart for ministry. And I would just love for you to share that with our everybody that's watching.
Yeah, thank you. So Nathan Misirian, born into a pastor's family. My father was a Baptist pastor. And as the Lord would have it, I really had a front row seat to what serving looks like. And there's kind of a sweet story when I was in grade school, when we lived in the upper Midwest where there was snow during the winter, not like some Florida winters, that my mother would wake us up early in the morning on Sundays. And she would encourage us to be as quiet as possible, put on all of our snow clothes, and she would drive us around to the term was widows of the church. So it's kind of an old school term. And our job was to shovel them out so they could go to church and then see my dad preach. So very sweet opportunities about working behind the scenes, going the extra mile, being a servant's heart. And so that's really been a huge guiding principle. I was trained as a teacher and even had the opportunity to teach special education, and then have been able to parlay that into the business world. And for the last 18 years, really have served organizations, nonprofits, churches, and businesses, really with a Google marketing, digital marketing emphasis. When I got married 27 years ago, the Lord also had set a path for my wife, and she was born into a pastor's family. So coming together as a couple and serving in churches in a lay capacity, we've really been unified and looking for ways to serve, and getting to work with Support After Abortion, and then volunteering and helping in any way that we can is really just fills our cup, I'd say.
That's amazing. I always love to say, I love when purpose and passion collide, and that's so who you are. It's amazing. It's great. So Nathan, we're here to talk about one of our newest initiatives for 2021. We've talked a lot about it in 2020. For those watching, maybe you're new to Support After Abortion, but we are in this movement, the abortion healing movement, to bring about a new energy. We know that there are so many people, men and women, hurting after abortion. And because of the religious polarization or the political polarization, they're not coming to get help, and they're living in darkness and pain and suicidal ideation and substance abuse. I mean, we have tons of stories on stories that share the pain that comes from abortion. And you know, the movement has originally started as the child that was lost to abortion. And then years later, it became the woman and the child, that the woman was impacted by abortion, coerced to have the abortion, and then the baby was lost to abortion. And it seems as though recently we've began to understand that abortion has more of a family impact or more of a generational impact. And so we're really embracing the concept of men and how they've been impacted by abortion and the uniqueness that comes with the hurt and pain that men experience. Nathan, how have you kind of been invited into these conversations with other men who've been impacted? You yourself have not been impacted, but what have you been learning, and why is this important that this be an initiative in 2021 for support after abortion?
Yeah, thank you. So really through the virtual conferences was the first opportunity that I had as the conference producer to see all of these video submissions, both pre-recorded and live, from men who were telling how they were impacted by an abortion. And then I have to say, at first, I wasn't really sure where the story was going or where the journey has gone. And what I have seen is a real underserved opportunity where there are, we would believe, millions of people, millions of men impacted, but have either buried it, don't know how to share it, have forgotten about it, chose to forget about it, or who are dealing with it, but don't know what the right outlet is. I was talking to a gentleman in Southern Indiana. He was telling me his abortion journey story, and it was almost by accident, we'll call it a God accident, that he found a small group in a church by a pastor, no networking, no marketing, where there was an opportunity for men to heal from abortion. And on his own journey, he went around really Indianapolis and found there's all these little silo pockets. And I know that's something you've seen as well, that with just providing overall abortion healing, there's a lot of isolated pockets. It's even more isolated for men around the country. And so I've really gotten a grasp of this vision that you've casted, that our board president, Janine Marone, has casted, which says, how do we both identify the compassion, the people side of it? How do we engage leaders who are doing it? And then how do we build capacity as an organization? And I really see what we're doing with this men's task force, which I know we'll go into in a little bit, as really a unique catalyst to do that this year in 2021.
That's amazing, Nathan. Yeah, because if we think about men as leaders of the family, we know that almost never, statistically, if you have an abortion early on in relationship, you almost either never likely get married or your marriage doesn't survive. And if we know that our world is trying to help the woman, but not the man, I mean, you can see and understand exactly why there isn't support. And having come from the pregnancy center world, you know, we struggled to find support for men, and for men to find volunteers or pastors or other people to find the need to serve the men in that center. There's a shift that has to happen in the minds of people that want to help and want to serve, to know that men are catalysts in both supporting an abortion decision, but also catalyst in also not supporting an abortion decision. And so many of the men that we've spoken to said they didn't feel like they had a voice. And it was her body, her decision, because isn't that what the media is saying? Can you say more from a male's perspective on that, Nathan?
So even better, I'd love to quote our guest we had last week, Adam Franzen, who said on this channel on Facebook Live with his wife, Carolyn, that the typical media message to the man is, because it is the woman's body, you don't even have a voice. And the best that you can do, and I say best with air quotes, is to be quiet and support whatever her decision. And what he said, and I'm quoting him, that's basically giving up as a guy. You're giving up that opportunity. And what the woman would like to hear is, where do you stand on the topic? And just agreeing is almost being complacent, being like milquetoast will be the word I'll use. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm hearing. The other thing I want to just draw out, again, just thinking about two conversations I had yesterday with men who have personal abortion journeys, is that just like the book you've written, there is a series of underlying roots, both that led to the decision, but more importantly, men who have maybe 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years since they were involved with an abortion decision, don't realize some of the challenges they're facing is rooted in those outcomes. So I think there's another opportunity to talk about unravel roots and the way that there is an opportunity for men to walk through some curriculum. even if they did that themselves or virtually. So I'd love to get you to speak on that a little bit too.
Yeah, it's so good that you brought that up, because what I believe to be the stories that I've heard is oftentimes it's men, Nathan, that say, my dad was no good to me. I'm not going to be a good father. I'm scared to death. I don't have the support because at 18, I was kicked out of my house. There's no way that I can support a family in this time. Or I was sexually abused. My child's going to be sexually abused. Why don't we just not even take the chance that they'll get sexually abused and abort this baby? I mean, time and time again, and men think differently than women. You know, women go into this emotional crisis where men go into solving the problem.
That's right.
Right. And it creates this, without coping skills and with all this junk that men and women bring into relationship, it's just an explosion when that unexpected pregnancy happens.
So things I've heard and stories I've listened to firsthand would be, as a problem solver, as a guy, just ignoring it's going to go away. So as you saw in the pregnancy center world, most of the women who come are coming by themselves. It's rare that someone's there who's the father. Maybe he's sitting in the car. Rarely is he in the waiting room. So that's very, very similar. The other part is financially comes to mind. A lot of guys are first financially minded, and if they don't have the money or between jobs or not working or living at their parents' house, to have a baby feels highly inconvenient. And I'll just say selfishly, they'd like to support her to have an abortion because it kind of solves the issue. And I'm not saying that's everybody's story. In no way am I trying to generalize it. Those are just some of the examples I've heard. And lastly, particularly those who come from a non-faith-based approach, it's really almost an indifference. They don't really value life to the way you and I might think about it. And so that's also just a very different framework, where you and I might see that more as a treasure, and they may just see that as an inconvenience. And what do you do with inconvenience? You throw it away or you discard it. So there's something there that's also very different that I think we need to be sensitive to.
Yeah. And you bring up a really great point, Nathan, because you and I see the world very differently. Men and women see the world. That's on purpose. And I feel like the pregnancy center movement is beginning to embrace that we need to see men and women different. We need to serve men and women. I believe the abortion healing movement's just a step behind that. We do have curriculum providers. We do have authors who have written towards men. I just don't feel that we see it as much or see it as often. So can you talk to our audience a little bit about why it's important that a man work with another man, maybe initially, maybe ongoing? Why is that different than a woman helping a man? What comes up for you?
So a couple of things I've seen in men's ministry is the way a guy speaks to another guy is going to be very blunt and may for most people could come off as offensive if a woman or a wife is hearing that. One of the things I've seen guys do, I'll call it a technique. Not everybody likes it, but they'll take a very hard edge approach in order to, quote, wake up the guy. I don't think that works for everybody, but that's an approach I see. The second thing I see is in a men's small group or in a men's counseling session, you just need one person to break the ice. And speaking for myself, I'm a bit of a processor when it comes to making decisions. And so compared to a women's curriculum where day one, the curriculum might say, here's 5 questions, immediately start sharing. That's a very different pace and approach I find with guys. Not that women aren't processors, but on the whole, I find guys are much more reserved. And of course, culturally, we don't have a system where guys are standing up and, going to shed a tear in public or with another guy. That's not a normal. It's not seen as a normal process. So having man to man is important. I would say there's also sexually related topics that come up man to man that may not be appropriate with a woman, a person of another gender in that sense. And then father issues that come up are very different for men as it is to women. And I think those issues can more quickly be addressed in a man to man setting. But I've also seen very good examples when then there's couples-based approach. And so I would just advocate, no surprise, I'd say an options-based approach, but there's very good examples of where couples come together in a couples setting to also work through healing related issues. So I think man to man is a step. There is a step for couples. And then there's just ongoing healing about other things that we need to unpack in life, beyond what might have happened with an abortion experience.
Absolutely. And I'm reflecting on Joseph Roebuck, Dr. Joseph Roebuck, who's been on our show, who's been in our conference. Him and I did an amazing interview, and he enlightened us from a male's perspective, having experienced abortion and his relationship with his aborted son and so on and so on. But one thing he did say was that part of that options-based perspective is he liked when he was able to go from man to man and women in a group setting, because he appreciated the different perspectives. So I totally agree with the options approach. I'm really reflecting, Nathan, on that guy that has never talked about his abortion experience, maybe hears a testimony or is awakened through some kind of experience. You know, God's always knocking on our door, bringing the darkness to light. And I just feel that he's going to respond to a man's testimony to see himself in somebody else. And so how important is it that men begin to share their story? They feel empowered, they begin to heal. So that what happens when men begin to experience that?
Well, the examples of this individual from Indiana I spoke about, that's how he first even thought to consider his abortion experience, because he heard someone else say it in a Bible study. It never even occurred to him that that's something he should reflect on. And with another man I was speaking with yesterday, who was also here in Southwest Florida, that was a very similar story. It wasn't until you hear somebody else that the guy even could remember there was something to deal with. So I'll just say, in many ways, maybe different than women, the men are not leading with, oh, I have this story. It really can be quite forgotten. So sharing the story, I think, is important. What they do with it is also a big question. And so again, I heard this yesterday, where a guy might hear a testimony, a story of how they've moved through some healing or an abortion experience. But what does the guy do with that? We don't really have a process. The average church person doesn't know what to do if someone raised their hand or in a small group or virtually online said, oh, I have an abortion background. What do I do? Nobody knows what the right advice is to give. So there's a real need for education. I don't think everyone has to be a counselor, but what's the path we guide somebody down? You know, certainly if we were to apply first aid to someone who we see injured on the sidewalk, we would know you put a compress on it. You're going to call 911. We know there's certain things that need to happen. We don't really know what to do, I would say, culturally, with men who want to go through an abortion healing process. So I'm going to do a pitch back for support after abortion. This is your channel, but that's what's so innovative about working with you, Lisa, and the team is we are breaking new ground about what's the process to use. And then for leaders who are already doing it around the country, here's something scalable that can be applied. And so every person doesn't have to relearn it, just like people learn CPR. And of course, the CPR processes get revised over the years. But I think support after abortion is this amazing catalyst to learn, apply, equip, and then really empower people to apply that. And that's how we'll be able to catch the guy who hears the testimony in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and can find a process in his area to go through healing, not hear it once and then suppress it because there's no option to take the next step.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. And so I want to stop here and just, if you're just joining us, my name is Lisa Rowe. I'm the CEO of Support After Abortion. I'm accompanied today by Nathan Misirian. He is our producer of our virtual conferences, our technical advisor, our strategist. He has so many elements that he's connected to us with. But the thing we're talking about today is our male task force, one of our initiatives for 2021. We're following an amazing interview from Adam Franson and Carolyn Franson. If you missed it, I strongly encourage that you go to our YouTube channel, you go back through our live videos and you watch it. They're a married couple. Carolyn works with us at Support After Abortion as our program coordinator. And Adam joined her last week to really talk about, from a male's perspective, what it's been like to journey alongside Carolyn. He himself was not a part of her abortion experience, but he has a lot of really wise things to share. was just profound, and it was very well received. And it just was perfect timing for us to then come before you to talk about how we are going to continue to bring the Adam Fransons, the Dr. Joseph Roebucks, and the other gentlemen that Nathan has been talking to, preparing for this male task force. So Nathan, I think this is the best time. Would you talk to the folks watching? What is going to be happening? What are we doing to help really circumvent this huge hole in the abortion healing movement in terms of men?
Well, it's a real honor. I've been asked from Lisa to really just be the facilitator of a men's task force here in 2021. We have three main goals. And the first one is really building on the success that you and Janine have done last year, which is the consumer-based research. And we know through both of our conferences we've had this year, July and October, leaders are hungry to know initially from a woman's perspective, what are those roadblocks to getting healing? And if they were to get healing, in what format and approach would they best like to receive that in? And that was done in partnership with Shepherd Research. And so the opportunity that the Men's Task Force has this year is really twofold. We'd like to raise $30,000 to fund another set, brand new research in a similar way, just focused on the need for men and what are those roadblocks and opportunities to provide healing to them around the country. So the money that we hope to raise this year is to fund the research, but more importantly is to get all the results that come with it. And our upcoming conference, depending on when the money is raised and the research is completed, you can expect that we'll want to share those results and insights. We believe it'll be a one-of-a-kind research done with the highest level of statistical analysis to make sure there are smart decisions can be made so that ministries can grow and help men. So that's our first big initiative. Anything you want to add in terms of the research approach, Lisa?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. I just want to make sure that everybody knows it's the consumer research that we did. So it's to better understand how to serve men. So we know there's a hole, we know there's issues, we know there's not enough people talking about it. You've heard Nathan talk about the education piece. How do we do that? Where do we go? How do we engage men? What are those roadblocks? Because our ultimate goal, and I love that you brought this, is to create similar to CPR, step 1, step 2, step 3, so that you, the leaders of the movement, can then go out and truly engage and grow and really build the capacity of the movement, because we really need to invite the men into this conversation. And can you just think of the capacity as the catalysts of families and our major leaders in our world? Like, could you just imagine, Nathan, if leaders across our globe that are men get this concept that people need healing, like what could happen? I mean, I could just see the top blowing off of this, right?
So two other, if it's okay, just two other goals that we'd like to do this year is similar to the New York Times bestsellers list. A lot of people like to see what's being recommended as a top 10 curriculum. And so we're inviting our steering committee and through a network of men, what would be the top 10 recommendations of men programs, male focused programs and materials that could be used, evaluate it, give feedback, and then provide that knowledge back to the leaders who are connected to support after abortion. So again, there's no need to write something from scratch or wonder, I can just try to reuse the latest materials, but put him instead of her in there. How do we raise to a new level of excellence? So that's one of the things we'd like to do is recommend, and we might do that every year. What is the next top 10 materials that would be really useful in programs? Then the third part is a little easier said than done, is a lot of guys like to hunt. And when you go out hunting, if it's not a duck farm and you do true hunting, which is walking a pasture or laying in a field, you have to really do some work, some research to find where your prey is. And this is not going to be a bloody conversation anyway. But the idea that we want to focus on is there are men, there are pastors, there are programs all throughout the country that we don't know exists, who are doing small pockets of men-related healing. We want to find those folks. And we want to bring them into the fold. We want to connect them with other leaders. We want to say, you're not alone as a leader. And if we can equip you, if we can empower you, if we can connect you, if we can build your capacity, then those programs succeed beyond what they're currently doing. So quick summary, those are the three big pinnacle goals we have for 2021.
That's amazing. And they perfectly align with how we are strategically organizing ourselves, building collaboration, growing the capacity, but that compassion piece is still at the focus because we need to build education and help people understand. That's amazing. So I'd love to tease folks that are watching, who are some of these men and what are some of their backgrounds and how have we gotten connected to them?
So we had a wonderful speaker at our conference in October named Greg Mayo. He's also written a book, which is behind me on the shelf. He has a personal abortion story to share. But what's unique about his approach is later in life did he realize that there was a need for healing. As he began to walk a journey of healing, he noticed all of these problems that he had experienced all went back to some pretty deep roots. So he ended up writing a book. It's really a novel, a creative approach to tell that similar story, but in a fiction-based approach. And it's a way for someone to read it, to not feel judged, but to see the comparison of, oh, I've made similar life choices, whether those choices were sleeping around or it might have been alcoholism or other things, not being able to have attachment in relationships. And he's used that book to do something like that. I'm also pleased to announce that we've mentioned his name already. He's going to feel like a celebrity, but Adam Franson's agreed to come along, but also bring that fresh perspective, which is someone who doesn't have the story firsthand, but has been a part of watching someone go through the healing process. And then we have a number of other people that are praying about joining us, from the clergy, from some businessmen, some clinicians that have experience. And so we really want to form 6 to 8 core guys that will guide this team, but then it becomes a networking opportunity. And each person has 20 people in their network. How do each of them engage it? And that's really our hope, to get the message out throughout the year. But to be able to make decisions, we're just forming a core team in that regard. You certainly can email me if you're interested or know someone that you think would be a great fit. We are very happy to do networking. I know Lisa and I are going to be meeting somebody next week who's in the clinician space to kind of explore what God has for them and if there's an opportunity. So we're excited about even the new relationships we're gonna be making this year.
Absolutely. So Nathan, the vision then is to create this core team. And then from there, it's going to be almost like a monthly meeting of the minds to continue growing capacity and educating the world. Tell me more.
So our vision is to have a steering committee that meets monthly, and that's with the core team, about how we execute on our fundraising goal. How do we identify other leaders? And through various relationships and networking men to men, we're going to be engaging hopefully hundreds of people through this process. And I don't want to overstep what a core team can do, but they really set the vision. But then our goal is to empower and enrich this vision in others, all towards those 3 common goals: helping to raise funds for the consumer research focused on men. How do we go through a top 10 curriculum or recommendations, we hope maybe annually? And then how do we find other leaders who might be doing abortion care for men, but in these little silo pockets, and start to bring them together? I do believe a vision that you shared with me is in our future virtual conferences, we'll have a lot more content dedicated to men. And we also know, and of course, being on the inside, that the topic of men and abortion was in the top 5 most searched and watched topics of our 2 virtual conferences we had this year. So we know we believe we're following the right path to accelerate in this area. And we're just bringing some organization and guy power to the process.
That's amazing. So Nathan, what would you tell a leader watching today who says, you know what, it's only me and my female team. I don't have the capacity to have a man on staff or even a man that can share in this experience. How might you encourage them today? And what might they walk away with as step 1 in this process?
Wow. That's a great question. I guess I would have 2 answers. One would be you're definitely not alone, and would encourage you, secondly, to reach out, and you can watch some of the content that's available in our virtual conferences. We have over 120 videos, and there's quite a big segment dedicated to firsthand accounts of people going through abortion, as well as speaking about doing counseling or healing programs for men. That's kind of all step one. Step two, Karen Barbito on the Support After Abortion team every month is running a get to know you webinar. And you can find that on our Healing Network partners page on our website, on the Support After Abortion website. And you can get plugged into what other partners Support After Abortion is working with, so that as a leader, you're not alone. And if you have questions, here's an opportunity to have access to our core team, where from a variety of backgrounds, we might be able to share both firsthand clinician education expertise to help some specific issues that might be out there.
Right. And I would just say that don't walk in fear, right? Change is hard, but not to walk in fear. And what we spend time thinking about grows. And so I would encourage the leaders watching to know that if you do exactly what Nathan just shared, you begin spending time, you begin thinking about how to serve men in a new and different way, or even inviting that first man into a space of healing, that I promise you, growth will follow that. It has every time. It's in the word, and God promises that. And so I would say, don't walk in fear, and follow those steps that Nathan has shared, because if we don't start doing this, we're going to continue what we've already done, which we know means we're underserving a huge population that is walking in pain and hurt after abortion. Nathan, it's time to close. One of the things that I'm really reflecting on is, I remember hearing a testimony years ago where a pastor had said, if a man invites his family to church, they're likely going to go to church, and they're likely going to continue to go to church. If he stops going to church, more often than not, the family stops. And there was a testimony to follow that. What would you like to close with in bringing men into this healing environment? What can our world, from everything you've heard, expect to see in terms of the healing movement?
So let me relay a story. So one of the things I heard yesterday, and I don't have permission to share his name, was saying is all men are broken, and we get that. But not everybody's at a place to want to admit their brokenness, don't want to convey that, believe they have to have a perfect exterior, or believe they're showing a perfect exterior. And the husband, the dad, does have a strong influence, but they may have lived their life, or are living their life, that has not earned that credibility. And so one of the things that I'm hearing is just because a man starts to make the turn, the audience, the people around him, are going to be likely skeptical. And so that journey for a guy can be very lonely. And so I think that's one of the opportunities for other men to come along inside and say, you're not alone. Hey, that's lonely for me too. I had to wait a year. I had to wait 24 months. Hey, my wife came around in 6 months. Just to hear that practical feedback is very useful. So that would be the thing I would say. As there is rebuilding trust, I think a core issue is trust is built. There is an opportunity for others to follow, his family. Maybe he's not together with the original person he was with. And there may be opportunities for restored healing, or not to create more negative relationships in the future. Some of it, at least I'm thinking about, is healing is, I think often about healing relationships in the past, but one of the things, it's healing now to also protect relationships in the future. And what does that future look like if a man gets healed? What about the additional positive relationships? To me, that would be the hope that comes with this. Yes, healing for the past, but I had a guy say to me yesterday, well, Nathan, that's so old, I can't really change that. So my approach is, what about the future? What about all those additional relationships you can now positively impact? And so would be my encouragement for guys. There's a looking in the past, but maybe more the emphasis should be about moving ahead to the future.
Wow. Yes. And just really understanding that abortion does hurt men, and it's carried with us, whether it's being named or not. It's very much at the root of so many choices, so many behaviors, so many relationships, so many connections. We have quite a bit of feedback here that's been distracting me halfway through. Tons of, Adam, if you're watching, tons of just support for you. Here's a question from Sylvia. Sylvia, we're grateful that you are always a huge support of our Facebook Lives. How do we get more men to share their testimony, Nathan?
I think that is the $1 million question, or maybe even the $30,000 question from a research standpoint. I had this conversation yesterday with someone else who asked me that exact same question. I don't think there's not an easy answer. So far, what we're hearing is there's a lot of individual stories. I don't think we've yet seen a pattern, a consistent way to make that happen. We hope to discover that through the consumer research.
Yes. A great comment from Laura. Glad to see you back. She said, I agree. A men's task force is vital in the abortion healing movement. She speaks about her ex-husband who had very negative emotions towards her abortion, and it was the catalyst to the trauma she experienced in her marriage. However, after getting out of the marriage and working on my own healing, I had met two men who had their own abortion stories. They both were a catalyst to my healing because of how supportive and understanding they were, because they felt the pain from a different side. Wow, Laura, thanks for sharing that. Yes. Another thing that Laura shared was I later on found out that my brother had an abortion and carried around so much shame and guilt for so many years. And part of that was my comparison to my brother and his success. And I had no idea that he was actually part of a choice in the abortion decision.
Yeah,
Laura, thank you so much for sharing.
It just speaks to both men and women holding on to shame. Absolutely. And shame that the Lord has already taken for us.
And not to judge a book by its cover, right, Nathan? Like, just because we're experiencing outward success doesn't mean we're experiencing inward success.
For sure.
Right. So I'm just going to give our audience just one more opportunity. If you have any questions for Nathan and I, we're really excited to share this news with you. I do have a couple announcements while we're making the shift to end our conversation today. Nathan, how can everybody get a hold of you if they are interested? Can you share your email address?
Yes. So my email address is the word system@supportafterabortion.com. And I'm sure we'll put that in the comments afterwards, or you can just visit the website, supportafterabortion.com, and fill out the contact us. There's also a phone number, and I'm in the phone tree if you dial that number from the website.
Amazing. And you had shared about what Karen Barbito, our director of programs, is doing. She's going to be hosting a call every month with a piece of training connected. If you are an abortion healing ministry and you are interested in growing your capacity, collaborating with other leaders, learning this step-by-step process, we're going to be sharing about the male task force and everything we've learned along the way, marketing advice and client services advice, all of that. Nathan, can you share one more time where they would go to connect with her?
So please go to supportafterabortion.com, and at the top, there will be a button that says Healing Partners or Network Partners. And if you just scroll to the bottom, there'll be an opportunity to click a link that says join the webinar, and you'll get prompted for a calendar invite, and you can pick a date and time that's best for you.
That's awesome. Wanted to let you know that Support After Abortion is involved in 2 events this month. We're going to be participating in the March for Life in Jacksonville. So if you're in that area, you want to come and listen to us speak. We're going to be talking about the importance of abortion healing in the pro-life movement. We're also participating in the March for Life in just a few short weeks after that in DC. Very excited about that. If you are just tuning in to Support After Abortion for the first time and you want to know more about us, we are going to be launching what we're calling our 101 sessions. So you can learn more about the heart of our ministry, how we're helping to end the demand for abortion by healing those who have been impacted across the world through compassion and collaboration and capacity. And so we're just really grateful that you're interested in developing ministry for women and men who need healing after abortion, because we have to grow the capacity if we're going to make a change. Nathan, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for everything you do. You deserve a shout from the mountaintop. I'm so thrilled for everything that's going to come in 2021 and your commitment to our ministry.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, thank you. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Teresa Bonapartes is going to be joining us. She has an amazing ministry that helps children or siblings connected that have lost their siblings to abortion. And we're going to learn more about how that ministry is impacting change and helping people find healing. See you then.